Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. Mrs. Steve's computer continues to wreak havoc in the household, but she's trying to bring in a backup computer. So if you see her dual tasking, that's what she's trying to do over there. But appreciate everybody being here tonight. If this is your first time here, welcome. We'll have a presentation tonight, and I also have a video of some testing that we did regarding the 136 page Frank's motion that regarding the Delphi case. So Mrs. Steve assisted in some of the control tests out in the woods, which I thank her. And you buy her nice things such as her Tyvek suit, and she gets it dirty. But anyway, we'll be able to watch that video in a little bit. And yeah, and she did get ice cream. I had to buy her ice cream. But as we go through chat and everything, absolutely have and be mindful and respectful of the mods, families, and each other. If you have any questions, Mrs. Steve will be putting them and highlighting them. That after the presentation and after the video, we will get to as many of the questions as we can. And but as we start off here, if you have any information regarding this case, even during this static stage that we're currently in, that Richard Allen doesn't have any representation. If you have information regarding this case, make sure law enforcement has it so that justice can be found for Libby and Abby, and as we move forward through the court systems. We have this setback. Well, you got something up.
I think I got me something.
Okay, let her get that turned off. Had an echo there. But anyway, now we have a backup to the backup, so we're okay. But as we move forward, like I said, the judge will make sure that the proceedings go forward, regardless of all the issues that and the surprises and things that just continue to happen in this case. We just have to bear with it and realize that we've been set back in time by about a year. But and we have more information now than we had before. But really, the point tonight of what I've been doing for the last 3 days, as far as setting up the test, was that there was a lot mentioned in the 136 pages of what one man could do. So I looked at, Chris and I spoke, and he had asked about me using some mannequins to do some control testing with. And when I approached Mrs. Steve about certain trying to determine how to best set up the drag marks in the woods and the mannequins and coming up with weight ratios, she volunteered that that she would let me use her and drag her through the woods. And so that's what we did. And but you'll see as we go through with the presentation and of what the determination or the determining factors I was trying to find. That with these findings, was it possible that Richard Allen could move 2 victims, depending upon his strength? And I know very little about his history and his physical abilities. I don't know if he played sports in high school. I don't know if he had a gym membership. For the fact that there's a lot of individuals that I've met in my life and my career, that as I had interactions with them, there's some people that will surprise you with their strength. And then there's some that's just the average human. And I've only met one or two freaks of nature. I played football with a young man that back in the in the late 70s and 80s, early 80s, that he was a freak of nature. I mean, he wasn't 5 foot nothing and built like a bullfrog, but absolutely phenomenal strength, and did not work out a lot or anything. He's just a freak of nature, as I said. But how often do they occur? I've only met 2 or 3 people in my whole life that either had those cat-like reflexes, or this one individual had strength that was phenomenal. And but everything I did was based upon what the average human would be capable of doing. And because there's so many rumors and speculations out there about um, was they, even in a 136-page document, they mentioned that, or a lot of people are speculating that some acts occurred in the creek, and then the bodies were lifted and placed up on the Logan property. And that's what some of this testing was about. I was wanting to see if a single individual could do that. In my heyday, I was a little over 6'2", 240, 250 pounds. I've shrunk a little bit as far as height, gained a little bit as far as weight. I'm not what I was in my early career. I got in a bad altercation early on in my career, 3-on-1. I survived it, but they did hurt me. And I hurt them. But my upper body strength, my lower body strength, and my core muscles are as good as ever. I work on a farm all the time. My upper body strength is not what it was when I was in my early 20s due to my injuries. They ripped one of my shoulders out. But with that in mind, I'm still probably just average. And so I looked up what some of the other average humans can do as far as human males, size, weights, and that's what everything's based on. So as you look at this information that we put out there tonight, keep that in mind, that there's nothing definitive. And if you have any information about his workout, his health, um, did he have gym membership? Was he a bodybuilder? I have no idea about that. But anyway, um, we'll get into the slideshow part of it now, and we'll do the slideshow and then we'll do the video.
Okay. Ruckus is in chat. Kristen is in chat.
Hello.
Unearthed Secrets is in chat.
Oh my goodness, we have creators, the Lord, and that we just got everybody. Thank y'all. Appreciate everybody being here. And actually, I think tomorrow night I've been invited by Ruckus. He's going to do a show tomorrow evening, and check his channel out and see what time that is scheduled.
Ruckus at Steve. Just get you some new shoulders, Steve. I did.
Yes, and I have to carry his man purse and everything else for him. And Ruckus can, Ruckus used to be a football player. He would understand exactly what we're talking about tonight. And you'll be surprised when I tell you what some of my findings are. It changed my opinion a little bit about where I stand on Richard Allen at certain points, and if he could be a lone wolf, because there's only certain things and where certain homicides could occur if he's lone wolf. If there's other variables, contributing factors, then of course we'll get into those a little bit later on. But with Mrs. Steve, I did a body drag. We did a lot of these in law enforcement, first responders do them. Now, there's options out there from the ranger roll, the fireman carry, all these other ways that you can carry human bodies. I did the most simple body drag system. The others takes training, and I didn't want to hurt Mrs. Steve in case while she's on my shoulders or something, I crack a rib or two. Don't want to live with that. And Mrs. Steve, compared to Libby and Abby, she's going to be between the two. Of course, I'm not going to be going into weights, But Mrs. Steve's BMI, body mass index, is great. She has a great weight. She was an athlete, and so I was able to do it, but I did not want to cause any injuries or anything, and tried to be as mindful as I completed these tests to do that. So people will, if you want to argue about, well, they could have done this with a ranger roll or for fireman carry, yes, those options are out there. But just for moving, I set up a scenario of going into the woods and doing a 25-foot drag because the FBI made reference that there was movement within the crime scene. The 136-page document or motion also makes reference that there was movement within the crime scene. So I just did a 25-foot drag. And to see how difficult it was across a forested wood floor that is uneven, because a lot of your training that a lot of first responders do, they're in gyms, they're on wooden floors, they're on concrete, but the uneven, treacherous footing that you occur with trees and limbs and even holes and things in a leaf area. I went into the woods that's next to where my crime scene is, and I set up this scenario. Put my tape down, and then have Mrs. Steve come into it. So you'll see this video after this presentation. But some of the control tests I was trying to do is, of course, time. How long would it take someone to move a victim any distance? And so this is a very short distance. And what would it take as far as the offender strength to take a victim that is unresponsive or the victim of a homicide? And how easily would they be able to move that victim? And then, of course, you'll also see I retested the stick pattern time with this from stage sticks, as you'll see in here. And also part of the test was how long would it take an individual that if the sticks are a pattern or part of a ritual as far as a signature that he's going to memorialize by photography, how long would that take? You'll be able to see that. And then there was some things brought up about if the wind and the conditions of blowing the leaves, if leaves were on the victims, would they leaves be blown off of the victim? And so that's part of this test also. And then I wanted to see if there would be any and how the drag path, the floor, the debris on the ground, leaf, the ground cover, how that would be affected by a victim being pulled through those leaves, not only by the normal shoulder drag, but also by the ankles. I did both with Mrs. Steve. She was quite the trooper, and she allowed me to do that. But like I said, it cost me some ice cream, and well worth it. But she said that she's on a new diet plan, that she's going to gain enough weight where I can't drag her through the woods. And so that's her new diet plan. But here we are. This is her in her Tyvek suit. And we use the white Tyvek suit for the fact that not only would you would have or possibly have drag marks, but when you're being drug across this type of rough surface, the victim, and either if they're nude, will sustain certain injuries, scratches, and otherwise. If they're wearing clothing, you may be able to identify those drag marks on their clothing, tears, briars. Everyone can, the old hitchhikers that get on your clothes. Ask Ruckus, he had about 1 million on him about a week ago of walking through the woods. But and so we try to consider all of that so that you would be able to see this, and so I could document it and we could talk about it and reach some type of conclusion of what the attorneys are alluding to when they mention that one man couldn't do this or that there was others involved. And so that's what all this is based upon. But I went into a new test area that is adjacent to where I've been doing the other tests. It has an undisturbed leaf ground cover. The wind conditions, if you go back to historically for the day that the Libya and Abbey were discovered, I think it's like a 14-mile-an-hour wind was blowing. During this, where I was at, it was a 13-mile-an-hour wind. You'll see in the video, I got some video of the leaves blowing and things. And then as the drone flew down the path after the Mrs. Steve was dragged up through this corridor, you can see the leaves blowing there. And that was kind of surprising that you would think a 14-mile-an-hour wind would move a lot of leaves at ground level, but you'll see that's not the case, which answers one of those questions. But then as I laid out the tape and everything, you have the pre-drag area, then you have the post-drag area of those leaves being turned over. And you'll be able to see some of that in the video, but I also documented it with the photographs and the camera so that you would have an understanding of what that looks like, of what law enforcement would look at in a crime scene to determine, is there movement and where are there possibly struggles for or fights or where there's interactions between the offenders and the victim, either through fights for survival or through the being moved or the victims certain acts occurring at certain locations, and then they're pulled or dragged into another location. Some of the things that we would look for, and that's going to be those turned over leaves, sticks that are popped up that expose dirt that normally would not be in that part of the pattern of the leaf, or even bare areas of where the leaves are scraped off on high spots, or where the leaves are drug off when a body is drug across that location. And then, of course, I made several other pictures on them and things. And then we have Mrs. Steve where I placed her near a tree head of how would a person be able to drag another individual, a victim, near a tree? What would be the positioning? Is it quite easy to do so, to back up to a tree and then just lay them down? So that was part of the testing. And then putting her in a position where, as you could see that, and then going down and looking at some more disturbed areas along that path. Then, of course, I did the stick pattern you'll see in the video. And these are some of the things as far as when I did the drug her by her ankles. You'll see the debris, the discoloration, the drag marks on her back. That would be on clothing or it would be on skin. If you have an individual that, as what is reported and what is contained in some of the images of being unclothed, what type of injuries would you expect to see if someone was drugged and from one location to another? Because it's one thing if victims are dragged through a forest versus that they're carried. What is their weight? Is it something an average man can lift and carry by easily picking up? Because in no shape, form, or fashion is it easy to pick up anyone that is just dead weight, unconscious or otherwise. It would take an extremely stout individual if you didn't know the proper way to go into a fireman carry or the ranger roll. And y'all can go out there and look those up and see how those techniques are used. If you don't have those, just picking up someone that is limp, average man ain't going to be able to do that. I guarantee it. And all of y'all can go out there with whoever your partners are and try to simulate that, and you'll see. You tell them go limp as a noodle, it's tough. Whereas just dragging them is not, but just lifting somebody, it is. And then as I was doing the drag, what body parts, if you reach under their arms, what body parts will have contact with the ground? What will those drag patterns look like? It's not always going to be the heels. It depends on how high you lift someone. With Mrs. Steve, I kept her low to the ground in case I fell. I didn't want to drop her. I tried to be as delicate during this process as I could and protect her as much as possible in case I fell. I'm not the most graceful individual at times. And but you can see that the discoloration of her new white, unpackaged, brand new Tyvek
Mm,
that she stained on
lovely.
here. Yeah, and we have drag marks that's on that. And you would have that on the clothing, or you would have that on skin. And so, like I said, all these testings and everything I do, I try to get to maximize whatever findings I can when I do this, so that we'll have a base of information of talking about. It's not just that you have some attorneys in a courtroom saying that this is what happened, this is what occurred, and people's imagination says, or their theories or the rumors are that uh, they're they were washed off in the creek down an embankment, and then they were lifted and transported by an individual. And that's what these tests and these findings are. And I have a strong opinion about that now. That prior to doing these tests, I wouldn't have known. I would have known it. I just wouldn't have realized some of the findings and some of the realizations that I have come to since doing these tests the last couple of days. All right. Well, with that being said, what we're going to do is I'm going to start playing the video, and we'll talk through the video. I'll explain what was going on for that, and Mrs. Steve will be gathering up the questions as we move forward. And so I'll turn off my camera, and I will kick out the um, presentation, and we'll bring in the video, and it should start playing here. But like I said, these control tests are for the movement of the victim, the offender strength. As you can see, this is what the wind was blowing at the time I was doing the test. Went into the wood area, and then Mrs. Steve gets on the ground. You'll see in just a second here as these images pass through. But this is the area that she was set up at. This is my corridor that I set up. I did a walkthrough showing you that there's no disturbed earth, there's no leaves, the leaf pattern, and there's a lot of leaves that have fallen in the last couple of weeks here. So all of this is last year's debris. There is a lot of fresh layers here. Here, Mrs. Steve in her Tyvek suit, her bunny suit, as I call it, gets in position. And this is a 25-foot pull. You can look at the time and see how long it takes me to pull her, even lifting her upper. I'm trying to tell her to be as limber as possible, and then going under her armpits, and then
which are sore today.
which are sore today. And as I drag her, trying to keep her as low as possible so that I don't fall and drop her and cause any injuries. And like I said, my lower leg strength and my core muscles, I'm as good as anybody. I'm as good as I was 20 years, 30 years ago. My upper strength, not as much. But could the average person take someone that weighs what Libby is reported to weigh and do it? It would be extremely difficult. But anyway, after I drug Mrs. Steve down this path, I flew the drone over, and you'll be surprised that the leaves that are blowing away, these leaves weren't attached to the ground, and they didn't get drugged away with Mrs. Steve. So I was pretty surprised about how little of a impression of dragging Mrs. Steve across this surface was, how little of an impact, and that you would have to absolutely look to identify that path. And here I go with the stick patterns. These are the same sticks I used on the mannequins a couple of weeks ago. They're piled over there on the side, so I just had to simply go over there, get the sticks, bring them back over. Mrs. Steve, once again, allowed me to do this. And I did this right here for the fact I wanted to see how long it would take to place these sticks, and then go get a camera and come back and memorialize through photography, for the fact that the FBI included that in their search warrant of the Ron Logan property, that it was something they expected. And was that due to that the positioning of the sticks is something that an offender that had a ritual or had a signature would do, that he would um, take photographs or video with his cell phone or with a camera. But that was the purpose of this. I wanted to see exactly how long it would take and have some type of understanding. Of course, I only had to go to the exact same place, but even on the last time when I did it with the mannequins, I had to go look for the sticks, but it only took me a couple, 3 minutes to do it then. Um, then, of course, right here, I hit Mrs. Steve in the throat when I dropped the stick on her. And she reminded me that not to do that. And so we placed the sticks, and then I go and get my camera. There's probably about a 20-second delay because the camera's over there on the cardboard, and I just walk around and take pictures. And as I move around, so that you could see about how long it would either do a video or take an image. Doesn't take a lot of time. We know we have a narrow window of time that from the abduction and what was taken on. And here I'm doing a leg pull, and then I throw some leaves on Mrs. Steve here. And as you can see that the wind, if you look at the background and above her, the leaves are blowing and everything. But on the ground, the leaves are not blowing off Mrs. Steve. Even when she raises up, they're still sitting there. You can see the leaves blowing. This is around 13-mile-an-hour wind on the outside of the forest and trees, but inside the tree line, they didn't blow that much. And then I went back 24 hours later, and this is what this is. This here is immediately after I drug Mrs. Steve, and so that you can see the drag pattern with the fresh. But at the end of this, the next loop, you'll see where I went back 21 hours later, trying to meet the time frame of what occurred day of, and see if you could easily identify. And I know this is, like I said, immediately after, and you can see there's not a lot of telltale signs that anyone was drugged down through here. Whereas when you see the next section of this video, the closing moments of it, that there's a bare area right there of where when I was doing a leg pull that we took the debris off of the ground. You can see those small pebbles. Now, this next section was done today. This is me going back 21 hours after the crime scene, trying to look at what has changed. Has the leaf and the dirt dried? And what does that reveal? And is it something that you would easily be able to spot and see, or is it something that's a little bit more difficult? And would you be able to easily identify that someone had been dragged through this forest? And no, unless there's only a couple of 3 indications, because you can look here at ground level. You can almost see from this level of where the legs went down through there. But all in all, average person would overlook it, miss it, wouldn't pay a lot of attention to it. And there's only a couple of patches of either fresh dirt where her heels caught, or where a stick was pulled out that was stuck on her clothing on the Tyvek. So anyway, but we got that. There's both computers still up.
Yeah, but mine is teetering on that edge.
Okay. All righty. Well, there's the end of that video. So we'll get out of that. I'll bring up mine, and then we'll go back. In this picture here, this is one of the areas where you had the 24 hours later of that turned up earth that you saw from the day before that was in the video, the dark areas. And this is what it looks like 24 hours or 21 hours later. It was a little bit grayer, and that was about the only thing that really stood out 21 hours later in a couple, 3 places on that ground cover and that leaf debris. Okay. All right.
So let's hope that everybody stays.
All right. So we lost one computer. We're down to computer number.
All right.
We still got two going.
Keep going.
All right. But anyway, we'll get into the questions parts of it now. And so if y'all have any questions, we'll move right on into it.
Okay. All right. So I have no mouse.
Uh-oh. Just hope.
So let's see if I can do this with a finger without messing up too bad.
All right.
Oh, and I keep going to that. All right. So here we go.
Only this touchscreen.
Well, thank God, because I would be in trouble. All right. So let's see here if I can do this. Oh, look at there. Necessary evil. But Steve, what? Oh, goodness gracious. What if the wood was used to make an emergency gurney, and that's how he moved her alone and then just covered up the 2 stick track?
Anything and everything is possible, but they would be evidence of that too. What materials does it take? I mean, did he use his jackets? And I understand there's so many different ways when you overthink. I just did the quickest. How long and does the average person have the abilities to make a gurney, and how long would that take? And I look forward, if you have the time and abilities to go out there and build one of these and create some of those videos, to have your input on this. And I'm being serious that absolutely. There's a lot of different ways and a lot of different measures. I mean, it's a great point, but there's so many different ways. I just took the most simple, easiest way, grab the victim and drag them. Um, you know, we are only talking about having a very few moments and of opportunity, from the time that the last images are made on the bridge to the time that he's seen going towards his vehicle and the camera work and all the other stuff. So we're talking about a very narrow opportunity, and time wise, and the least amount of time. Now, if you've got a team of 20 people or 3 people or 4 people, if that's you don't even need a gurney. Then everybody just grabs an arm and a leg and walks them over there. So uh, uh, I believe more than likely, if he's a lone wolf, he would be able to just do it himself. Now, with that being said, this is what my opinion of the matter is. If Libby and Abby died at the scene of where they're discovered within the crime scene tape, one person can do that. I believe a lone wolf, even if he had to pull them 50 feet or 100 feet, as long as they're on that plateau, I think a lone wolf such as Richard Allen would be and capable of doing that. Now, if you tell me that he took them in the creek and the defense has evidence that the homicides and they were deceased prior to coming up on the plateau, I'm with the defense. I do not think one man was able or capable of doing that, getting them up that embankment. The only way I believe that the girls could have got up that embankment, if it's a lone wolf, they have to be alive when they climb up out of the creek and do it under their own power, and then whatever happens on that plateau. So if either one of them, or not either one of them, but especially if Libby, if the homicide occurs prior to her getting out of that creek, I'm with the defense. I do not think one offender could do it. If the homicides occurred anywhere else and they're brought there, one offender, I do not think could do it. If the homicides happened after dark somewhere else and they were brought in after dark, one offender did not do it. That's my opinion, my speculation. The only way I can see now, through these tests and what I've done is that for it to be a single offender, Libby and Abby had to be alive when they arrived within the taped off crime scene area, and that's where the homicides occurred. Now, could he have gone and got some wet clothing and came back and washed them off and then just throw the clothing in the creek? Absolutely. But I don't think that any of the homicides, but like I said, that's just me speculating, my opinion of how difficult it was to move Mrs. Steve, um, and what the average man would be able to do with someone that weighed what has been reported as far as the weight as Libby. And that, I know a lot of people are probably going to be arguing that fact, but, go out there and try it. It's not easy to do to move someone that 30 or 50 feet, even on flat areas.
Okay. J Farm 13 at TCW. How hard is it to detect blood without chemicals in conditions like this? Would it be hard to see once it was on the ground?
It depends on if you're like me, red green deficiency, colorblind. Mrs. Steve, not so much. It depends on every individual's person and their abilities to where they're at on the spectrum as far as being colorblind and can see red on green and not colorblind. Um, so it's still difficult, but there's a lot of things they can do, and they have canines now that they can bring into a scene that help process crime scenes. And I know there was canines there. I don't know what specialized uh, training they had. Was it dogs and canines that were trained to look for certain things? Did they use certain lights? And were the people looking at and seeing that, yes, uh, uh, we have a blood trail on these leaves, or we have a certain area of where the ground and the leaves is disturbed, where some altercation occurred, or there was some movement, and we have a lot of blood there versus over here. So there's a lot of things. Yes, um, in some conditions, blood is extremely easy to see. Some not so much. So many variables.
Blue light.
Oh, okay. 63 clocks.
Working? Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve and Mrs. Steve. We needed this to get back on track after the hearing fiasco. TCW is best. Thank you. Very kind of you. Appreciate your support. We'll use that on our next trip.
Okay. And Mark.
Good to see you, Mark.
you.
Enjoyed meeting you last time. I look forward to seeing you again.
Okay. And M. Cunningham, do they know what happened to Libby's clothes?
My understanding and everything is what Abby is wearing is Libby's. And so now there's other clothing that is missing or was found in the creek. What is the total inventory? Law enforcement has that. It's in the evidence thing. We have pieces and of that puzzle from what was released in some images last year, or those, and what was found then and what has trickled over to currently. We don't have the total inventory list of all the articles. We have references made in the FBI of certain items missing, among certain items missing, which is important wording. And so some of the clothing from the defense's 136 page says was on Abby. The appearance of those clothes on Abby, I tend to agree with the defense that those are Libby's clothes on Abby.
Okay. And Miranda, what evidence is there that they were dragged?
I know of, some people say they can see where the leaves. I don't know. That's why the reason of this testing was to see that if the movement occurred and from one location to the other, and they were not dragged, and it depends. Law enforcement has that information. Where was other interactions? Was there another location where there is? And law enforcement would test that blood and tell you exactly um, whose blood is in what parts of this crime scene if it's spread out over any area. And how far is that? And if Libby being as heavy as reported as, there's only two ways that if you had to move a man distance, if we're only talking a couple of 3 feet, it's not an issue. But if we're talking 10, 15, 20, or 30 feet, or even further inside that tape, that we have an individual that is reported to be whatever Richard Allen, and if he has a gym membership or he's one of those freaks of nature that is super strong, yes, he might be able to pick Libby up. But if he's not super strong, he's going to have to drag her. And that's what this is. We don't know. We don't have all the images. We only have 2 or 3 images that have been released reportedly of the crime scene. And we don't know how good they are, if there's been any altercations or photoshopping of the people out there that have them, of were and are there drag marks. And that's the whole point, that we don't know. If they're carried 50, 100 feet and Libby is carried 50 or 100 feet, don't know. Then, of course, if you told me that an average human could pick up someone the size of Libby and carry them 50 to 100 feet, I'd be with the defense. No, I don't believe that's the case. If Libby was picked up in that crime scene and moved any distance, and if there's evidence and she doesn't have any of these injuries supporting drag marks, there's no evidence that she was drugged, that she was lifted and transferred a certain distance, then I'm going to be on the defensive side that, yes, there's nothing saying that Richard Allen isn't part of this, but there would be something saying that he would have to have help.
All right, SSS. Wouldn't there be life-sustaining fluids all over the person doing the moving?
Absolutely. You're going to have that Lacard's principle of transfer. Whatever you touch, you're going to be leaving some of your environment and your DNA with them, and you're going to be taking some of theirs with you. If they've sustained injuries, and we have those body fluids, not only blood, but there's a lot of other different types of fluids within the body that occur during violent encounters. And so you will have that transfer. And absolutely, I would expect to see that throughout the scene. If it's localized to this one area where the victims are, like I said, if we're only talking about them being moved 2 or 3 feet, that's one thing. If we're talking about them being moved 50 to 100 feet, that's totally something else. And either if they're not dragged, then like I said, there's a couple things that in my thought process, some wrenches have been thrown into there that if I had all the images, of course, and had all the information, which we'll get because it will come out in court, what is the defense referencing when they talk about victims being moved? What was the FBI referencing when they was talking about the victims being moved? What was that distance? Because that is probably the most critical part of this puzzle for me.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. And Joey, hi Steve. Do you think that time is a big factor in this case that can prove he did not act alone?
Of course, always timeline is critical in all aspects of it. And that's what I was saying is that if we have evidence through all the data and all the evidence located at the crime scene that says that this up on that plateau up on the above the creek, and we have evidence that the girls were able to go there under their own power, and that's where the homicide occurred, then that takes care of a lot of the time. Was it during a flight or was it during a forced march that they were taken there? We don't know. Law enforcement may have a better understanding of that, of looking at that path of either being forced or flight, and and how did they acquire reaching the top of that plateau. Um, and of course, there's certain information in one of the images that um, you can't tell if it was under their own power or if it was uh, something that where they may have fell.
And Miranda at True Crime Web, do you still believe RA could have acted alone but unalived the girls where they were found?
Yes, that's what I agree with. If they're up on the plateau and that's where the homicides occurred, yes. If you give me distances, the further you go, the more likely, even on that plateau, the further you go, and what evidence do we have? Is there evidence of drag marks? And if there's no evidence of drag marks, then of course the percentages for me to say that he had help go up. If the homicides occurred and they have evidence that occurred in the creek, the odds of him acting alone, in my opinion, go down, and he had to have help. And uh, and so that's just part of it, of trying to gauge this, and because it's very difficult. But like I said, what can the average man do unless he's one of those freaks of nature?
J Farm 13, we don't know if they were moved 10 feet or 500 feet according to the information. Do we?
No, and that's the thing. If they're 10 foot, lone wolf. If it's 500 foot, no, not lone wolf. Not in my opinion. I'm with the defense.
Okay. Blue light for Calamity Colleen.
Steve and Mrs. Steve, you guys make a great team. I love the way you guys work together. Thank you. We've had
We've had practice.
decades. We've
had practice.
We hope we have several more decades. Kristen,
Right.
behind the crime door, member for 13 months. I just love you two together. Thank you, Kristen.
Oh.
And after my show, I think she'll have a show tonight. Y'all go over there and check her out.
And I think I just skipped over BG's membership. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's these hands trying to work on a computer with no mouse.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to try this one. Kristen,
For all the very hard work, we missed you today.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I wish I could have been up there for the walk, but just so much to do.
All right. And I'm on. Okay. Miss Miranda.
999. Thank you for the investigative work that you do, Steve and Mrs. Steve. Thank you for your support.
I
And
appreciate that.
we absolutely appreciate it. It's awesome.
All right. And Lori. How long does it take for blood to drain into the ground?
Well, it's just like it's a liquid. And there's a lot of that, but the gravity flow, it depends. There's, once again, how fast is the body fluids, such as blood? Is the heart beating or is it gravity fed? And what is the terrain? What type of soil is it? If you have hard clay, of course, you're going to have more pooling. If it's sandy, it's something else. And looking at that, I believe they would be pooling, but that pooling could occur under that ground cover and you'd never see it. So they could be a massive pool of blood that's under the leaves, and it just wouldn't be seen to the naked eye because it's self-leveling. Like all liquids, they're self-leveling. And so, but now if it in the areas that are clear, you would see it, or you'd see the paths of as it flowed.
All right, give me 1 second here. Okay, 38. Okay. All right, do that, go away, do that. Blue light from Daisy.
499 super sticker. Thank you. Appreciate your support.
Okay. And Freckled Joy. Did the coroner get a gurney down there or did they have to hike the bodies out?
I would expect, because I've been in that position where we've had to go in and move people from either being injured in woods during hunting, or they've been recovered for whatever reasons of what occurred to them. And we've always been able to get some of those. I'm sure there's the a special name for certain types of gurneys, but we've always been able to get those in and then work as a team. And Freckle Joy was in the medical field, and she can tell you it's long hikes through uneven terrain isn't easy. Even when you have all the equipment that you need, it's not easy to move people any distance up hills. On uneven ground. It takes teamwork and training to be able to do it safely.
Okay. And I got some people worried about my mouse. It's not my mouse. My other computer is giving us fit. So I'm on a different computer tonight with no mouse. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, the Geek Squad is going to get a call Monday.
They sure are.
May get a call tomorrow.
Let's see here. Miranda, what if he carried Abby but not Libby?
And that, we're talking about half the weight. That's something that's I believe could be done, but it'd still be difficult, even for the average human. I mean, I think Abby's like 100 pounds, but still, it's not an easy task. But like I said, if you tell me that with Abby, I could extend that things could have happened a little bit further out or even in the creek. But with Libby, no. If you say that it happened anywhere other than that plateau or off in the creek, that changes my opinion. Lone wolf versus multiples offenders.
And Olivia, weren't drag marks found near the crime scene that possibly occurred when climbing out of the creek?
Yes, and that's something that law enforcement would be able to look at. And do we see in that earth as people climb out, do we have those handprints, those fingers going into soil? And when we look at the hands, do we have that ground in dirt of wherever they climbed up out of there? Is the clothing or their bodies, although we have certain issues mentioned through the the 136 page document that says that they appear to be cleaned. And cleaning can occur. It doesn't have to be in the creek. It can occur with just creek water used with clothing. But yes, some of the drag marks and some of the indications of disturbed ground cover, trails through mud, law enforcement would document those, analyze those, and determine how they occurred. We just don't know. We don't have the pictures.
And Lali, where were bodies found in relation to creek? Sorry, I missed that.
My understanding is they were found up on the plateau 50 feet up onto Logan's property away from the creek. And I think that's where the GPS location that in the search warrants indicate.
And from Joan, isn't it strange? No mention of wet clothes, even after Temp was 34 that night. Redressing someone dead in wet clothes is not easy. As RN,
registered
had to redress in dry clothing, not easy.
And this is something the RNs out there can absolutely tell you what the timeline would be as far as redressing someone. Mm-hmm. And if some of y'all would like, if you had to put on certain types of trousers, and I think they even have certain trousers that are put on, but I think most of those are Velcro things. But the nurses out there will have a better understanding of how long it takes, because they've sat there and watched family members and helped family members redress people that are almost at the same level of or inability to dress themselves. And so they can tell you what that time frame would be in dry clothing, and they'll have a better understanding. I let the experts speak on matters that know far more than I. And so if any of the RNs want to put in there about what they think the time frame would be for an individual to assist someone redressing that is unconscious or otherwise, um, I, I wouldn't argue, and I can't argue against your expert opinion on that.
All right. Blue light for Madison Stevens.
$10. Thank you. Mrs. Steve is the boss. Thank you to you both for all your hard work. Thank you. Appreciate that. And you are 100% correct. We got
your boss.
As I said, you are the boss.
Oh, I am the boss.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we got tickled a couple of times during the our activities up there, and as I was moving the stick, and I hit her in the throat with one stick, I said, she gave me that stare, and I scared, and I almost ran off.
Stare. I think they call those darts.
Yeah, darts.
Okay. And Lali, are we to assume they walked across the stream?
If he's a lone wolf and they have evidence that that's how they empowered, that's the only way I can see that he would be a lone wolf, is if they walked across the stream, climbed that bank, and the encounter and the homicides occurred on that plateau. Lone wolf. Still doesn't mean it is the only possibility, but I will always say it's more than likely a lone wolf. But if it happened anywhere else, then of course I go with the defense, not alone, not a single man.
And Lali, what was the terrain at the creek bank? Degree of angle of the hill?
Some of them, I've walked that bank. Some of it depends where you go up. There's pictures out there that are extremely, I mean, you're looking at 75, 80 degree angle, almost straight up. And then you have areas that are eaten away and the soil falls away due to trees falling and things. And you almost have like a step ladder that you can come up. And so it just depends where you come into that bank and the abilities of what has soil erosion occurred and when has the bank fallen off. But there's some steep areas, and there's some areas that are easily climbed, and then there's some that I wouldn't want to try to come up them.
All right, so now let me cruise through here.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and I appreciate everyone as Mrs. Steve continues to search and checks. Oh, okay.
Right. Thank you so much.
Lone Pony, Mrs. Steve, you are a rock star. Absolutely. I'm so lucky to be married to a rock star that allows me to do this. And like I said, when we were discussing it, she says, well, let's not just use mannequins, let's do it. And I very rarely does she surprise me. And I looked at her and I said, okay.
He didn't say, "Oh, are you sure you want to do that?" no, it's okay.
I jumped at the opportunity.
Literally.
Yeah.
All right. And Miss Anna, my pet theory is the offender wanted something from the girls down the hill, under the bridge. They partially cooperated, then resisted and ran. Did they partially undress, redress as they ran?
Absolutely. As you know, there's no one, I can't argue against that pet theory. And I would, some of that pet theory aligns exactly with me. And I would agree with this, that they ran across the creek and went up the other embankment if he's a lone wolf. And so, yes, a lot of that makes sense.
Okay. And, I can't overlook Ruckus, right? So, at Steve, after our trip to the crime scene at night, Do you think anyone returned and placed or staged the bodies?
I think specifically to go back for an offender, he could go back under the guise of I'm a searcher. And so could he bypass the security and families and not be recognized in total darkness? The ability of, and someone wanting to do that would be high risk. They would have to be something motivating them, because there are offenders that go out there and take great risks. You know, look at Ted Bundy. He went to the same beach in daylight and abducted two individuals. And so could it happen? Absolutely. Did it happen? Highly unlikely. But that's just my personal opinion. But for the fact that that terrain is, and I've been there multiple times, day and night, is treacherous. As Ruckus will tell you, that if you looked at my camera bag, you can see where I dropped, and I had to protect it the best I could as I was falling down an embankment. But I was uninjured. No credit can be given to Ruckus for trying to save me, but he did get a good laugh out of it.
All right. Wait. Oh yeah, we've already done that one.
Okay.
So yep,
right.
I think we're good.
Well, guys, appreciate this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, put it out there. If you have any opinions about it, absolutely send me an email, make it in comments. I appreciate everybody's support. I appreciate the donations. It allows us to go out there and do things that we couldn't do without y'all's assistance. And but we appreciate y'all so much, and we'll get with y'all soon. I think I have a members tomorrow evening, and then we have Ruckus's show tomorrow, and I'll probably I'm gonna be out and about tonight, jumping through some other channels and things. So if I see y'all in other people's chat, look forward to talking to you.
You gonna leave it on that one?
No, we're gonna go back
Not that one.
on that one.
Okay, perfect.
All right, y'all have a great night,
Love
guys.
you. Thank you, mods. Couldn't do it without you.